Ja,
Hi, I'm Yoshi. I will be your herald for today. This is my first time here.
ja, deswegen freue ich mich, dass
And I'm happy to
Klimagerechtigkeit kämpfen.
be able to welcome beings here who are doing something for climate justice. We have Samuel Bosch, who lived in Ravensburg in forest occupation. And then we also have Kiki, also from forest occupations.
First of all,
And
my talk also will be translated in English, just in case you know. Und genau, jetzt ein bisschen einzusteigen, vielleicht
to tell you a bit more,
als ich damit
climate activism. When I started about 10 years ago, we were called climate activists.
schon Klimaterroristen.
And nowadays we're, for some at least, climate terrorists. And with this, I'll hand over, because we live in times where beings are criminalized. And yeah, the talk, dangerous opinions when forests are burning and climate activists are jailed. Have fun with the talk.
Ja,
Thank you. Also, a warm welcome from our side. Great that you're awake and want to listen to us. We will tell you a story that we sometimes call the case of Augsburg. That basically it's a crime story regarding the judicial system in Augsburg. Our activities are also very relevant for this year's motto, illegal instructions, because we often use subversive ways to find exactly the area of laws that are in the gray zone. And sometimes judicial proceedings are supposed to be boring, and maybe we would even prefer if they were, and they're long. We assume that we are at least on the same page about the fact that there's a climate crisis that we have to fight, and that our current economic systems are causing us to use much more fossil energies than we should, and there are turning points which will be reached. And Antonio Guterres said the following at COP29. We explicitly are fighting for climate justice because we can only achieve this if we find a solution that involves everyone, and that's what we fight for. Our story takes place in different cities. In Ravensburg, because that's the home of our forest occupation. In Augsburg, because steel factories was expanded there. In Göppingen, because the jail is there. And in Ulm, because we've been there a few times and did some actions regarding local politics. This old man, that's Max Eicher, and that's not just anyone. He owns multiple castles, one of the richest Germans, and also owns this steel factory. And of course, completely unrelated to all of this, he's the largest donator to the CSU, a conservative party that is currently active in government in Bavaria. And he thought that this steel factory was too small, and he wanted to enlarge it, even though steel is very bad for the climate, and we should reduce our steel production. And if that wasn't enough, then he wanted to expand his steel factory into this especially protected forest. No, me as the owner of the steel factory, I think you misunderstood me. The expansion of the steel factory is a environmental protection project because there will be more forest afterwards than before, because we planted a great forest that will, of course, replace and even be much better than the forest that was there before. And for this, Max Eichach was commended by the Max Eichach Foundation. And the environmentalists are actually right. We need to reduce our steel production, and we do that by looking for alternatives, checking where it might not be necessary to use steel. Example, you don't need to build a chair out of steel. Or we could stop making as many cars, because the way that we use them nowadays, that's bad anyway. And this Harry Potter bridge was built completely without steel. That not only made it more environmentally friendly, but also more durable in the long term. The Loh forest has many important purposes for those who live close to it. It protects the local residents from the noise and environmental pollution of the steel factory. So many of the activists of the Augsburg climate camp became active when it was known that the owner of the steel factory wanted to expand it. And they even thought about occupying that forest. And an environmental protection organization here in Germany sued the government of Swabia for the decision to allow removing that protective forest. And then there was suddenly a special exemption that allowed them to destroy this forest even before the well, it only cost 250 euros to get this special exemption, and that was done in secret. And I mean, the destruction is already done. So this special exemption was created only within 10 days, as we found out later. This is extremely fast for German bureaucracy standards. And you might ask yourself, why did the local administration of Swabia just spontaneously give this exemption for destroying this protective forest for someone who is the largest donator of the conservative political party CSU? You might have some suspicions here, which may or may not be true.
Also, a large part of the family of the administration president of Swabia is in the CSU. Himself is not, though. So what do you do if the forest you want to protect has already been put down, cleared? So we played a reverse card too, and that's what we did. So here we have a drawing of the local administration, so you can see it because I have a fax device, and there we went in, neatly dressed, drank. Then we went into the floor in front of the bureau of the local administration president. We sat on next to the window and put a rope out of the window, where Charlie climbed down and put a banner onto the facade. Then the police came and removed them very violently. So now you may ask yourself what was written on the banner, and it was only allowing to put down the forest despite still ongoing lawsuits is cheeky. So it's just a typical Bavarian overreaction. And then we had a very lengthy lawsuit or legal proceedings. That's an image from the police file. It's so bad because it was printed and then scanned in again multiple times. The people down there are the policemen and women, so that's super proof. So the charges trespassing and insulting politicians, more or less, which is completely excessive. So then we had legal proceedings. So this is how a long lawsuit works. So at first goes to the local court, then you can appeal to the regional court, then you can appeal again to the higher regional court. In our case, we couldn't because we were in the youth criminal law, and there are only there's only one appeal here. And then above all, we have the Federal Constitutional Court where you can launch a constitutional complaint. So the higher it goes within this graph, it demands a increased level of skills with the legals involved here. So what is the judiciary in Augsburg doing here? So here we have the rules that we got in Augsburg at the court. It's called Sitzungspolizeiliche Verfügung, and we have examples of things which were seized on the way into the courtroom, which weren't allowed inside the courtroom. So everybody was searched 2 times in their entire body. We had to give them anything, including pens, ID cards, or even tampons, because they may be thrown at someone in there. So they have a pretty good fantasy at Augsburg police. This meme is referring to a story which happened at the Augsburg Regional Court, which is in the same building as a local court. They also share the same coffee room, and within the same court proceedings at the same court, they said we were like totally childish, but at the same time, a person watching the proceedings asked the lawyers of us to give them a pen, as a lawyer was allowed to have one, and then the prosecutor did jump up and scream, he has a pen, he has a pen. So completely ridiculous. And this is very specific to activist proceedings. So that's not about murder or rape proceedings, it's about activist proceedings. And so this is what the judiciary in Augsburg is doing. What would you do if a person charged with a crime demands for the court appointment to be moved because their lawyer isn't able to come? Normally you would move it, but we got arrested instead because we didn't appear in court.
And they didn't ask for a financial penalty, but they wanted 7 months of jail without probation. And in the end, there was youth arrest for us, for Charlie and me, and well, this judge really has to hate us, we got the feeling. Over half a year after this action, the local court of Augsburg cooked a really beautiful stew for us, a stew of judgment, verdicts. So what are the ingredients? And in front of the window of the local administration of Swabia, there was spontaneous protest, and they used chalk to write, for example, slogans against the CSU, which were thrown into the stew. And then also during this action, there was a press release that was sent. Also, this was added to the stew. And of course, the slogans on the banners were also thrown into this stew. And 3 weeks in youth judicial proceedings is almost the highest possible penalty you can get. And Ingo almost had to go to jail about this. And this is really strange because this was there was an assembly, and this is particularly protected, and you can't blame a few people for everything that has happened at this assembly. And well, they really liked this stew, so they made another one, and they handed out another 3 weeks of juvenile detention. And well, they also told us some wisdoms. So the following were shared with us. Fridays for Future causes wars, and climate activism endangers the foundations of living, the basis of life of 8 billion people. And when we were at the regional court, it was over for us in terms of juvenile judicial proceedings. And we wanted to continue, but we never got the judgment, the verdict from the regional court, which we would need to go to the federal constitutional court. And in the end, when we got the verdict was finally delivered, things like those wisdoms were of course not added to this verdict. You can say these things in a specially protected courtroom, but of course they're smart enough to not write these things in the verdict. About the juvenile detention of Charlie, that was February of this year. And we received lots of solidarity from all directions. We're wondering and found ways to support those who are in juvenile detention. And we got together to write letters which they explicitly wished for. We also organized a Göppening, a small cinema in front of the juvenile detention center where we showed a movie. And here with this QR code you can write letters to beings who are currently in jail somewhere. On the right you see a picture of the juvenile detention center where Samuel was in at a later point. Jail, well, you don't need to go there on your own volition, so I just didn't go there. I did some actions during the time where I was supposed to be in juvenile detention, and well, we just made them wait. Made the juvenile detention center wait. And the actions that I did in that time looked like this. We did a panel discussion, and the police was there, but the police did not arrest me. They couldn't. And then we went to a forest occupation, and the police was also there, but they also couldn't arrest me. I mean, just because they were too incompetent. And then there was another panel discussion with the mayor. he was really surprised, and also I was not arrested there. Then we thought, what else can we do to kind of be a bit cheeky? So we hung up this banner in front of the juvenile detention center. It says, "Protecting the climate is not a crime." And also the banner that was the one that was involved in the occupation of the local administration of Bavaria. And of course, I always had a huge backpack with me in case I was arrested, so you have all your books, etc. And there are some more people who might or might not have committed some obstruction of justice, but they shall remain unnamed. And then Samu looked into his calendar. In 3 weeks I have some appointments. So, okay, let's go to Göppingen together and use this area of where I have no appointments to go to the juvenile detention center. So I had all of these things with me that you see here on the picture. It was very heavy, but I only had to carry it a few meters from the train to the detention center. And unfortunately, you're not allowed to take a portable computer. And I got a feeling for how everyday life is there, and got a view into a world that is much closer to other parts of society, but was farther away from me at the time. And the daily routine at the juvenile detention center is pretty boring. You exactly get what you need so that there's no violation of human rights, but yeah, well, it's pretty boring. It's okay, it's all right, besides the fact that you are under arrest, that you are in jail. I learned how to juggle, but yeah, mainly it was boring. I wrote a diary during that time, and the wardens were a bit suspicious because I looked at everything quite closely and wrote a diary. And this will be published soon, actually, this diary. And then there's some free time that you can use. Well, yeah, you can use that time to play with a person of the same gender as you for 2 or 3 hours in a meditative state. Most of, approximately half are only there in jail because they were unable to pay fines, basically because they were poor. They are in there. Small-time crimes such as such as shoplifting, even though, of course, we're always told, jail is only for those really bad ones who are murderers or worse. And the question is really if this is appropriate, because maybe a more lenient measure would be more helpful overall, because the goal is not to invoke psychological pain on them, and lots of them are really afraid of receiving psychological damage from this, and it's one of the last remaining forms of corporal punishment, really. And we did a picnic in front of this juvenile detention center. And we also brought some music equipment and asked for song wishes, so they could wish for songs that they wanted to hear. And they showed us something like 187, and they were really happy. And yeah, for a few hours we were there, and made that big tunes sound. And normally that's offense to communicate with those in detention, but oh well. And of course we thought we shall continue doing actions and not just concentrate on being in jail. So in the meantime, they put up a banner at a different local administration building.
It was also quite a funny moment, so for many days this was the main talking thing in the prison. The wardens asked me well, what my legal viewpoint is to this. So then another group, nerds, built an FM transistor, and we had one with short with a short range, and then they built one with a longer range to put up a prison radio. Unfortunately, they only had a digital radio in prison, so it didn't work out. But if you have any idea how to get around this, have an legal instruction for us, let's get back to it. Then one evening, also even after the point where you're locked in your cell alone for 14 hours, the wardens came in. You get very sensible of the sound of the keys. You usually wake up from this. They were like, "Oh yeah, we are packing your things now," and they're saying, "You gotta leave now." So at first they wanted to keep me in for 2 weeks. Now I was supposed to leave immediately, and was put on the street with all my stuff. So what happened? The Federal Constitutional Court said, "Oh, that's illegal." What Augsburg decided there, release him immediately.
Genau, das hat dann auch ein bisschen Wellen geschlagen. Aber jetzt natürlich die Frage.
So that made quite some waves. So what actually happened? Even before Samu was released, we telephoned around for a few weeks. We already had the verdict, but they were puzzled and we were puzzled. So yeah, it doesn't happen so often that you're being released in the middle of your spending your sentence. So the Federal Constitutional Court said the constitutional complaint is obviously reasoned. That's judicial German for "what the fuck did you there, Augsburg?" Because the Augsburg courts did one thing: the freedom of speech, Article 5 of the Basic Law, which especially exists to protect criticism of power. You have to weigh up this with the interests of those affected of the statements, and there's a very different regard being put to such statements if they are made for public opinion forming. And here it was very unclear which statement actually is the incriminating one, and also in that weighting, you as a court have to put up questions. What is this? This statement, is it an opinion? Is it a judgment of value? Is it a factual claim? Even if it was, so in any case, this constitutional court decision is absolutely devastating for the Augsburg judiciary. Also, as a court, you have to consider what the average public would think about this, and not what like an average lawyer would think about this. So the Federal Constitutional Court can only decide whether something is contrary to the basic law or not. So they did not stop the proceedings, but instead put it back to the local court. So now we had a new trial at the Augsburg local court. So we did something outrageous. Well, actually, it's quite normal. Also, the person who wrote the constitutional complaint cheekily asked to defend as well. We had lots of supporters there. We were well prepared, but the Augsburg local court was quite overstrained or overwhelmed. In the end, they postponed the proceedings. Now they're doing two hours a day for the next weeks. Our lawyer said, well, he doesn't have time for the next on some of those days, but they didn't care. We have to. For us, it takes 6 hours to get there. They don't care, so it's real kind of harassment towards us due to the Federal Constitutional Court decision. However, the Augsburg judiciary didn't want to accept that they made an unconstitutional verdict, so it's more about their own reputation, less about making constitutional proceedings. So, for example, one time I fell ill and couldn't come to the court appointment, so they didn't postpone it for the day as you usually do. Instead, they put out an arrest warrant against me. Of course, they didn't catch me. But then, when we publicly announced which train we will take from Ravensburg to Augsburg at the morning of the court appointment, but then the police was there at the train station and they brought me to Augsburg, which is quite crazy. So in the court hearing, which had been non-public due to the judge, this was written in the protocol. They wrote that the verdict was illegal according to my opinion and the opinion of the Constitutional Court, but not according to the Augsburg lawyers. So in the end, the proceedings against me were discontinued, which was quite cheeky because they don't want to pay the compensation for illegal arrest because they don't want to admit that they made a mistake. So in the end, we will continue with our activities. Of course, we have the great advantage of not having to deal with the court all the time. Well, it wasn't a great share of our time, maybe 5%, but it was quite annoying anyways. Of course, we will continue fighting for the Lowwald, even though the Federal Constitutional Court sentence or verdict doesn't have anything to do with the Lowwald. Of course, we'll also do creative actions like here at the large church in Ulm. We hope some of you will participate in this as well. Okay, great.
In general, you can say that this story is part of a scheme of criminalizing climate activists, and in Augsburg it's especially bad, and they surprised us once again with how repressive they are. But in general, from a political side, laws are being created to have more ways to repress climate activists. So we need to fight climate change. We need to fight the climate crisis and not climate activists. So get creative. Think about how you can use your time for climate justice from your particular perspective. I think everybody has some way of contributing here. And I also want to thank everyone who was involved in any way and who supported us. And yeah, we showed that we will not leave anyone behind, that we have lots of solidarity. And here is a way to contact us if you want to know how to become active or just want to contact us. Please feel invited to come to our assembly. We also do some talks there. You see some on the slides. And this is again the QR code which you can scan to write those who are currently in jail. Also, please feel warmly invited to follow us on Instagram. And there are some flyers over here. And please also ask questions. We still have some time. Yeah, exactly. You have the opportunity to ask some questions. But please, once again, a round of applause for this talk.
So, hier ist direkt eine Frage.
Okay, here's a question. First of all, thanks for your talk. And thanks for well, the injured has went to the court. So Mr. Lohner, the former president of the local administration of Swabia, is now in the Ministry of the Interior of Bavaria and now earns more money. So we definitely did heavy damage to him.
Genau, hier ist noch eine Frage.
And there's another question.
Schöne Vermummung.
The one with the covered face. A question from the internet. How or with what can we best support you? What do you need? So the best way to help us is to help us stop climate change and get climate justice. So the best way to support us is to become active, to join us, and to do great actions so that we can change the discourse that we have in our society about this. And yeah, if you can also just go to a forest occupation and bring them some tea. So the court really fucked up. Is there a way to punish the judge? Well, I think she was already punished because if your verdict is declared illegal by the federal court, constitutional court, that is already a huge punishment for the judge. We also did some complaints, but of course those are decided by those who they go on coffee breaks with together. Any further questions? Well, something completely different. Is there a calculation that tells you how much CO2 we could not emit if instead of military things we would not do them or reduce them? Well, I'm sure that there's numbers about this. We don't know them by heart, but it would also in general be quite nice to not have wars, even if it would be necessary. And also for the climate, that would be very beneficial as well. There would be less stuff that gets produced that will then be bombed just to increase someone's power. Another question. Feel free to take my mic. Or walk to the microphone. We do have that much time. We have 5 minutes. Well, thank you for the activities. I find all of that great, and the talk as well. And the other thing is, all these legal proceedings, they need to be financed. How did you do that? Who supported you there? Do you have enough support financially? Officially, we're all paying these fines ourselves, but there may or may not be donations that will help us pay them. Again, illegal instructions. And then if you go to jail, you have less penalties to pay. But of course, there are quite some. And within the proceedings, we do self-defense, so that also saves money. Yeah, so it's just cheaper than you might assume because we do that ourselves or with legals who are in solidarity with us. And greetings to Klaus, who is a legal who really supported us.
Dann erstmal hier hinten und dann bist du dran.
Ja, danke erstmal. Ich wollte
Well,
fragen,
thanks, first of all.
in den letzten Jahren euch noch geholfen
What kind of experiences have helped you in the past years?
Hackerinnen,
I know that besides hackers, there are other
Erfolg in dem Bereich hatten,
legals who were quite successful in this area. You just have to look at Hambi.
mit Anwältis. Seht das da noch ein bisschen Spielraum ist
So,
vielleicht?
what would be ways to improve this cooperation? Well, there are lots of legals who are in solidarity with us,
Dann meldet euch einfach irgendwo.
lawyers who are in solidarity with us. And if you are a lawyer, then become active in your local area. And there's also some activists who are really good at some legal
Von denen haben wir
areas,
auch den Tipp, den habe ich jetzt noch in der Präsentation,
and
dass man niemals
some even better than some lawyers. And we also learned that you shouldn't say this and this person is corrupt, but you should say stuff like what this person did is corrupt or what this person said is corrupt, because then that is not defamation, but then that is legal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks from my side as well. And before you said that the verdict was given to you or made public after you were jailed, that sounds very unusual to me. How is that possible? That's a good question. Of course, in judiciary there is the principle of, well, we had an oral hearing and the verdict was given to us orally, and that was the thing with Fridays for Future causes wars and so on and all of that stuff. And then usually there is a written reasons of the verdict given as well, but they came late. We don't know exactly why, but it came after the prison term of Charlie, but after Samu was arrested, so he could start writing the constitutional complaint even before Samu had to go to prison. Although, even though we have seen this decision was quite badly reasoned. So now we are over time, but if you would like to answer some questions, you could say where we can be found soon. I'd say in front of Hall 1 in the room over there, and also often at the assembly or at those talks.
Ja.